Hello. My name's Chris Kaiser. I'm the president of the Writers Guild.
And I'm Howard Rodman. I'm the vice president of the Writers Guild of America West.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Thank you. We're here to have a conversation with you about a bunch of things that have been going on in this building and with the Guild across the community. A couple of real advances that have happened in the last couple of months. The first of which, maybe we should talk about new media first?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, I think the major thing that's happened in new media in the past couple of months vis-a-vis the Guild is that we have made a deal with People's Production of Amazon. This is our first deal with a major internet portal, and it is a full MBA deal. It has all of the mining, fishing, and buried treasure rights that you would be used to if you worked for any of the legacy media studios or networks.
And that's if you're doing television, movies, or new media, right?
Absolutely. This deal covers new media work you might do for People's Productions, but it also covers things that will become television series, and it also covers things that will become feature films. Amazon is very ambitious on this score. And it's significant for a couple of reasons. One is that, as you well know, we painfully and triumphantly went on strike in 2008 for 100 days in order to plant our flag in that kind of amorphous territory called new media. But that is not so meaningful unless we actually have a presence in that territory. And this is our first large contract with a major new media player. And to go from 0 to 1 is a very big step. To go from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3 is going to be easier for the Guild to achieve.
But it also helps us when we sit across the table from old media, doesn't it, in some really meaningful ways?
Well, it absolutely helps us because old media, legacy media, can no longer say, you know, we would like to pay you reasonably, but we can't because there are barbarians at the gate and we're under siege from Silicon Valley. So we have to just eviscerate the MBA and make fun of you and go home. And what we can say is you can't use the competition from Silicon Valley as an excuse to treat us anything less than fairly.
That's a guarantee, isn't it? So,
it's a promise, it's a threat, it's our wound in the salt.
Right. So that's one thing that's gone on. The other thing is a related advance. We've spent the last year or so negotiating with Comcast on their e-channel shows, Chelsea Lately and The Soup. It's been a very difficult negotiation. You may remember that in 2011, Comcast acquired a majority share of NBCU, which was a little scary for us because their history in their own industry was decidedly anti-union. And although in the statements they made in support of that, their acquisition of NBCU, they claimed that they were going to stand by all of the standard industry practices that had made the entertainment industry, a relatively stable and cooperative industry for decades. We weren't sure about that. And in fact, much of this past year has suggested that Comcast was going to be anything but cooperative. They did almost everything they could to undermine the writers' power in these negotiations. They attempted to exclude showrunners from the bargaining unit, and they ultimately came to the writers of those two shows and said, you can accept something less than a full MBA deal. But the writers, who were, by the way, completely involved in that process, there every single day that they were in the room, assisted by members of the staff and also by the active support of a lot of other writers in the community, particularly writers who were working for NBCU, stood firm. And the deal they got was a full MBA deal, an excellent deal for themselves with pension and health and residuals and minimums, and more than that for all of us. And this is something they did for all of us. They established a bottom line. They said that we will not accept anything less than that full MBA deal when we negotiate with NBCU and Comcast. Very important.
As Chris said, when Comcast came to town, I think we all wanted to know whether the rules of the game would be the NBC universal rules we all knew, or whether we would be treated by Comcast the way they treat cable installers, which is to say, oh, here's a union we can bust. And because the writers of those shows stood firm, because the writers of NBC shows in a much wider universe stood with them, and because our staff worked hard, and because everybody hung together, it took a year, which is a really long time, but we now have what we absolutely needed to get, which is to establish that no matter who the owners are, the writers are going to continue to be treated fairly.
Right. So you may notice that there's a theme here that although it is the Guild working for writers, it's also writers working for themselves. None of these things, as Howard said, and as I said, would have happened without the sacrifice of the writers of Chelsea Lately and The Soup, without the active, engaged support of writers who had, I suppose, something to fear for standing up for the rights of their fellow writers. Well, similarly, we're coming to you now and saying that the progress we're going to make from here on out depends in large part on you. So what can people do?
Well, there's lots of things people can do. One of them is, as we've talked about, in 2008 we planted our flag in new media, but if we're to defend that territory and expand that territory, we can't do it without you. And I would ask two large things of you. One is, when you do a deal contract in the new media space, don't assume that it's automatically Guild covered, because it may be, it may not be. Call the Guild and ascertain. And the second one is, don't assume that because it's new media you can't get a Guild contract, because scores and scores of Guild writers have gotten Guild contracts in the new media space.
I think over 100.
I think we've got 117 and climbing as we speak. And these are some of them very, very significant projects. And the reason that they're Guild covered is because the writers said, we need this to be Guild covered. That was their leverage, and it worked. And the Guild staff is ready, willing, and able to assist you in making sure that comes to pass. Because unless we do that, we are in a situation where the technology changes, distribution changes, people's viewing habits change, and if we don't go into those new territories, we will be resolute in defending a 20th century labor situation in the 21st century, and it won't do us very much good.
Right. We're all pioneers. Each of us who starts a new project, sets out to do something we haven't done before in new media, is creatively breaking new ground. We also need to be breaking new ground from the point of view of a union. And we're going to rely on everyone to do just that. It's true, by the way, also, I should just mention, in video games as well, where we've had some success in covering certain projects. But again, this happens step by step. It's a laborious, slower process than was the case in old media, but it's necessary, and the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think anybody who's got a kid at home knows that there's a generation which is kind of platform agnostic, which is whether it's on a big 3D screen or a medium-sized screen in their living room or on an iPhone screen, it's just content to them. And we have to make sure that writing is protected writing for us, that the joys of having the Guild watch over you and have your back can't disappear simply because you're writing for a screen this big as opposed to a screen that big, as opposed to a screen that big.
While we have your attention, by the way, and that may be an erroneous assumption, but while we believe that we have your attention, a couple of other things that are worth noting. First is, don't forget to vote for your favorite television series. TV 101, the 100 Best Written Television Series survey, is out now for the next few weeks and open to all Writers Guild East and West members. That's the first thing. Second thing is that the Diversity Committee's Feature Access Project is accepting applications now, so if you qualify, don't forget to do that, and you can check the website or call the Diversity Committee. And finally, just to let you know that we are beginning in the next couple of weeks and then extending through the rest of the entire year to hold a series of member outreach meetings. They'll take place in the homes of various board members all across the city. They'll be attended by board members, by us when we can, and by members of Guild staff. And they are there so that we can hear from you and you can hear from us. You can tell us what's going on on your shows, as you're pitching feature ideas, whatever's going on in the business, what worries you, and we will talk to you about where our focus has been as well as we prepare for the next negotiating cycle. It's the only way for us to actually be as engaged and responsive as we can be if we can talk to each other.
Yeah. As the things we've talked about, I think, should demonstrate, whether we're talking about contracts in new media or whether we're talking about the situation with Comcast, NBCU, the strength and leverage which enables us to get the things that writers need comes from only one thing, which is an engaged membership. Unless you feel and act as if it is your union, then it's not your union anymore. So I would strongly encourage you to come sit with us, talk with us, express your joys and concerns to us at the outreach meetings so that you know what we're doing, but far more importantly, so that we know what you need.